student of Stevens, and I don't want to sound cliched or romantic or anything like that, but I think it was pure fate and happenstance that I even met Stephen Gardner. I went to USC because I was going to be a major in English education, and I'm not even sure why. I guess I was going to teach high school English or something. I got there and I met Stephen like literally when I walked into the place, and he introduced himself to me, which I thought was a little intimidating because he was a professor and I was a little snot-nosed student that was high and was a little nervous talking to professors. And he told me that he told me who he was and everything, and he said, "What's your major?" I said, "Well, it's going to be English education." And he said, "English education? That's kind of boring, isn't it?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I think so, but I don't know what I want to do." So, "What, do you like English?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I want you to be an English major." I said, "Okay, I think I'll be an English major." And I took his class, very first semester ever, and it was modern British writers and modern British poets. And he read a poem on the very first day, and I fell in love. I don't think there was a person that I had met, certainly as of that time, that could read a poem like Stephen Gardner. And I've heard a lot of fantastic people read poems, especially today, and still don't think anybody can read a poem. I think I turned this off. Okay. Can read a poem like Stephen Gardner. I'm going to tell you some other funny stories, but I want to read a poem called Epidermal Macabre by Theodore Redke. And if anyone's ever taken a class or even was around Stephen Gardner for 5 minutes, you would know that Theodore Redke was like God to him, and thus any student of Stephen Gardner also felt like Theodore Redke should be God to them. Epidermal Macabre. And delicate is he who loathes the aspect of his fleshy clothes, the flying fabric stitched on bone, the vesture of the skeleton, the garment neither fur nor hair, the cloak of evil and despair, the veil long violated by caresses of the hand and eye. Yet such is my unseemliness. I hate my epidermal dress, the savage blood's obscenity, the rags of my anatomy, and willingly would I dispense with false accoutrements of sense, to sleep immodestly, a most incarnadine and carnal ghost. I asked Stephen once when I was a student what he thought poetry was. And this was his answer, and I still remember it because it was bizarre as hell. I don't know what he meant by it, but I thought it was great. He said, a poem, when you write a poem and you know it's good, it's like asking your Uncle Tom for money. And if he sends you a big fat check, then it's a poem. If he sends you a dead trout, then it's not a poem. I thought it was very good. I have no idea what that was sounding like. I thought it was very good. Even though I was in USC maybe a year or so, and I went over to Columbia and worked with other great poets, Ed Madden, Kwame Dawes. I stayed in contact with Stephen. And Stephen was, when I look back on my life, Stephen was like, and with the exception of the birth of my children and my honeymoon, Stephen was pretty much like at every major event in my life. Just was there. So at my wedding with Lindsay, and he was my outside reader at my master's thesis, my outside reader at my dissertation defense. Wearing a hat, by the way, that says you can't fix stupid, which I thought was brilliant at my dissertation defense. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote and a poem that Stephen wrote from this anthology that he put together with Will. That if you don't have a copy of this anthology, you got to get a copy of this anthology. It's fantastic. There are South Carolina poets in here that I didn't even know existed. This state is so rich in this tradition, and some of them I knew. Jim, he's always spoke very highly of you in class, and I still have a copy, by the way, of The Man Who Grew Silent. I should have borrowed them. I could have got this. But this is a fine anthology, and the poem that I'm going to read that I wrote, Things to Tell My Son, he told me when I showed it to him that it was probably one of the best poems that I had written. I don't know if that was an insult or a compliment.